Biodynamic agriculture is a form of alternative agriculture very similar to organic farming, but it includes various esoteric concepts drawn from the ideas of Rudolf Steiner, 1861–1925. Initially developed in 1924, it was the first of the organic agriculture movements. It treats soil fertility, plant growth, and livestock care as ecologically interrelated tasks, emphasizing spiritual and mystical perspectives. Biodynamics has much in common with other organic approaches. It emphasizes the use of manures and composts and excludes the use of artificial chemicals on soil and plants. Methods unique to the biodynamic approach include its treatment of animals, crops, and soil as a single system, an emphasis from its beginnings on local production and distribution systems, its use of traditional and development of new local breeds and varieties. Some methods use an astrological sowing and planting calendar. Biodynamic agriculture uses various herbal and mineral additives for compost additives and field sprays. These are sometimes prepared by controversial methods, such as burying ground quartz stuffed into the horn of a cow, which are said to harvest cosmic forces in the soil, that are more akin to sympathetic magic than agronomy. As of 2016, biodynamic techniques were used on 161,074 hectares in 60 countries. Germany accounts for 45% of the global total, the remainder average 1,750 ha per country. Biodynamic methods of cultivating grapevines have been taken up by several notable vineyards. There are certification agencies for biodynamic products, most of which are members of the International Biodynamics Standards Group Demeter International. No difference in beneficial outcomes has been scientifically established between certified biodynamic agricultural techniques and similar organic and integrated farming practices. Biodynamic agriculture lacks strong scientific evidence for its efficacy and has been labeled a pseudoscience because of its over-reliance upon esoteric knowledge and mystical beliefs. History. Origin of a theory. Biodynamics was the first modern organic agriculture. Its development began in 1924 with a series of 8 lectures on agriculture given by philosopher Rudolf Steiner at Schloss Koberwitz in Silesia, Germany, now Kobierzyce in Poland southwest of Wrocław. These lectures, the first known presentation of organic agriculture, were held in response to a request by farmers who noticed degraded soil conditions and a deterioration in the health and quality of crops and livestock resulting from the use of chemical fertilizers. The 111 attendees, less than half of whom were farmers, came from 6 countries, primarily Germany and Poland. The lectures were published in November 1924. The first English translation appeared in 1928 as the Agriculture course. Steiner emphasized that the methods he proposed should be tested experimentally. For this purpose, Steiner established a research group, the Agricultural Experimental Circle of Anthroposophical Farmers and Gardeners of the General Anthroposophical Society. This research group attracted, in the interval 1924 to 1939, about 800 members from around the world, including Europe, the Americas, and Australasia. Another group, the Association for Research in Anthroposophical Agriculture, Versuchsring Anthroposophischer Landwirt, directed by the German agronomist Erhard Bartsch, was formed to test the effects of biodynamic methods on the life and health of soil, plants, and animals. The group published a monthly journal Demeter. Bartsch was also instrumental in developing a sales organization for biodynamic products, Demeter, which still exists today. The research association was renamed the Imperial Association for Biodynamic Agriculture, Reichsverband für Biologisch-Dynamische Wirtschaft (SEAS), in 1933. It was dissolved by the National Socialist regime in 1941. In 1931 the association had 250 members in Germany, 109 in Switzerland, 104 in other European countries and 24 outside Europe. The oldest biodynamic farms are the Wurzerhof in Austria and Marenho in Germany. In 1938, Ehrenfried Pfeiffer's text Biodynamic Farming and Gardening was published in 5 languages: English, Dutch, Italian, French, and German. This became the standard work in the field for several decades. In July 1939, at the invitation of Walter James, 4th Baron Northbourne, Pfeiffer travelled to the UK and presented the Betshanger Summer School and Conference on Biodynamic Farming at Northbourne's farm in Kent. The conference has been described as the missing link between biodynamic agriculture and organic farming because, in the year after Betshanger, Northbourne published his Manifesto of Organic Farming, Look to the Land, in which he coined the term organic farming and praised the methods of Rudolf Steiner. In the 1950s, Hans Müller was encouraged by Steiner's work to create the organic biological farming method in Switzerland. This later developed to become the largest certifier of organic products in Europe, Bioland 5. Geographic developments. Today biodynamics is practiced in more than 50 countries worldwide and in a variety of circumstances, ranging from temperate arable farming, viticulture in France, cotton production in Egypt, to silkworm breeding in China. 141 Demeter International is the primary certification agency for farms and gardens using the methods. In Australia, the first biodynamic farmer was Ernesto Genoni, who in 1928 joined the experimental circle of anthroposophical farmers and gardeners, followed soon after by his brother Emilio Genoni. Eileen McPherson and Ernesto Genoni founded Demeter Biological Farm at Dandenong, Victoria, in 1934, and it was farmed using biodynamic principles for over 2 decades. Bob Williams presented the first public lecture in Australia on biodynamic agriculture on June 26, 1938 at the home of the architects Walter Burley Griffin and Marion Mahoney Griffin at Castle Crag, Sydney. Since the 1950s, research work has continued at the Biodynamic Research Institute, BDRI, in Powelltown, near Melbourne under the direction of Alex Podolinsky. In 1989, Biodynamic Agriculture Australia was established, as a not-for-profit association. In 1928, the Anthroposophical Agricultural Foundation was founded in England. This is now called the Biodynamic Agriculture Association. In 1939, Britain's first Biodynamic Agriculture Conference, the Betshanger Summer School and Conference on Biodynamic Agriculture, was held at Lord Northbourne's farm in Kent. Ehrenfried Pfeiffer was the lead presenter. In the United States, the Biodynamic Farming and Gardening Association was founded in 1938 as a New York State corporation. In France, the International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movements, IFOM, was formed in 1972 with 5 founding members, one of which was the Swedish Biodynamic Association. The University of Kassel had a Department of Biodynamic Agriculture from 2006 to March 2011. Biodynamic method of farming. In common with other forms of organic agriculture, biodynamic agriculture uses management practices that are intended to restore, maintain, and enhance ecological harmony. Central features include crop diversification, the avoidance of chemical soil treatments and off-farm inputs generally, decentralized production and distribution, and the consideration of celestial and terrestrial influences on biological organisms. The Demeter Association recommends that a minimum of 10% of the total farm acreage be set aside as a biodiversity preserve. That may include but is not limited to forests, wetlands, riparian corridors, and intentionally planted insectaries. Diversity in crop rotation and perennial planting is required. No annual crop can be planted in the same field for more than 2 years in succession. Bare tillage year-round is prohibited, so land needs to maintain adequate green cover. The Demeter Association also recommends that the individual design of the land by the farmer, as determined by site conditions, is one of the basic tenets of biodynamic agriculture. This principle emphasizes that humans have a responsibility for the development of their ecological and social environment, which goes beyond economic aims and the principles of descriptive ecology 141-142 crops, livestock, and farmer, and the entire socio-economic environment form a unique interaction, which biodynamic farming tries to actively shape, through a variety of management practices. The prime objective is always to encourage healthy conditions for life, soil fertility, plant and animal health, and product quality 141-142. The farmer seeks to enhance and support the forces of nature that lead to healthy crops, and rejects farm management practices that damage the environment, soil, plant, animal or human health. The farm is conceived of as an organism, a self-contained entity with its own individuality, 148 holistically conceived and self-sustaining. Disease and insect control are addressed through botanical species diversity, predator habitat, balanced crop nutrition, and attention to light penetration and airflow. Weed control emphasizes prevention, including timing of planting, mulching, and identifying and avoiding the spread of invasive weed species. Biodynamic agriculture differs from many forms of organic agriculture in its spiritual, mystical, and astrological orientation. It shares a spiritual focus, as well as its view toward improving humanity, with the nature farming movement in Japan. 5 important features include the use of livestock manures to sustain plant growth, recycling of nutrients, maintenance and improvement of soil quality, and the health and well-being of crops and animals. Cover crops, green manures and crop rotations are used extensively in the farms to foster the diversity of plant and animal life, and to enhance the biological cycles and the biological activity of the soil. Biodynamic farms often have a cultural component and encourage local community, both through developing local sales and through on-farm community building activities. Some biodynamic farms use the community-supported agriculture model, which has connections with social threefolding. Compared to non-organic agriculture, BD farming practices have been found to be more resilient to environmental challenges, to foster a diverse biosphere, and to be more energy efficient, factors Eric Lichtfaus describes being of increasing importance in the face of climate change, energy scarcity, and population growth. Biodynamic preparations. In his agricultural course, Steiner prescribed 9 different preparations to aid fertilization, and described how these were to be prepared. Steiner believed that these preparations mediated terrestrial and cosmic forces into the soil. The prepared substances are numbered 500 through 508, where the first 2 are used for preparing fields, and 7 are used for making compost. A long-term trial, DOC experiment, evaluating the biodynamic farming system in comparison with organic and conventional farming systems, found that both organic farming and biodynamic farming resulted in enhanced soil properties, but had lower yields than conventional farming. Regarding compost development beyond accelerating the initial phase of composting, some positive effects have been noted. The field sprays contain substances that stimulate plant growth include cytokinins. Some improvement in nutrient content of compost. Although the preparations have direct nutrient values, their purpose in biodynamics is to support the self-regulating capacities of the soil biota in the case of 500 and 501 and the biological life resident in the composting organics, as well as the mature compost itself, in the others. Field preparations. Field preparations, for stimulating humus formation. 500, horn manure, a humus mixture prepared by filling the horn of a cow with cow manure and burying it in the ground, 40-60 cm below the surface, in the autumn. It is left to decompose during the winter and recovered for use the following spring. 501, crushed powdered quartz prepared by stuffing it into a horn of a cow and buried into the ground in spring and taken out in autumn. It can be mixed with 500 but usually prepared on its own. Mixture of 1 tablespoon of quartz powder to 250 liters of water, the mixture is sprayed under very low pressure over the crop during the wet season, in an attempt to prevent fungal diseases. It should be sprayed on an overcast day or early in the morning to prevent burning of the leaves. The application rate of the biodynamic field spray preparations, i.e., 500 and 501, are 300 grams per hectare of horn manure and 5 grams per hectare of horn silica. These are made by stirring the ingredients into 20 to 50 liters of water per hectare for an hour, using a prescribed method. Compost preparations. Compost preparations, used for preparing compost, employ herbs which are frequently used in medicinal remedies. Many of the same herbs are used in organic practices to make foliar fertilizers, turned into the soil as green manure, or in composting. The preparations include 502, yarrow blossoms, Achillea millefolium, are stuffed into urinary bladders from red deer, Cervus elephas, placed in the sun during summer, buried in earth during winter and retrieved in the spring. 503, chamomile blossoms, Matricaria recutita, are stuffed into small intestines from cattle buried in humus-rich earth in the autumn and retrieved in the spring. 504, stinging nettle, Urtica dioica, plants in full bloom are stuffed together underground surrounded on all sides by peat for a year. 505, oak bark, Quercus robur, is chopped in small pieces, placed inside the skull of a domesticated animal, surrounded by peat and buried in earth in a place where lots of rainwater runs past. 506, dandelion flowers, Taraxacum officinale, are stuffed into the mesentery of a cow and buried in earth during winter and retrieved in the spring. 507, valerian flowers, Valeriana officinalis, are extracted into water. 508, horsetail, Equisetum. Planting calendar. The approach considers that there are lunar and astrological influences on soil and plant development, for example, choosing to plant, cultivate, or harvest various crops based on both the phase of the moon and the zodiacal constellation the moon is passing through, and also depending on whether the crop is the root, leaf, flower, or fruit of the plant. This aspect of biodynamics has been termed astrological in nature. Seed production. Biodynamic agriculture has focused on the open pollination of seeds, with farmers thereby generally growing their own seed, and the development of locally adapted varieties. Biodynamic certification. The Biodynamic Certification Demeter, created in 1924, was the first certification and labeling system for organic production. 5. To receive certification as a biodynamic farm, the farm must meet the following standards: agronomic guidelines, greenhouse management, structural components, livestock guidelines, and post-harvest handling and processing procedures. The term biodynamic is a trademark held by the Demeter Association of Biodynamic Farmers for the purpose of maintaining production standards used both in farming and processing foodstuffs. The trademark is intended to protect both the consumer and the producers of biodynamic produce. Demeter International, an organization of member countries. Each country has its own Demeter organization which is required to meet international production standards, but can also exceed them. The original Demeter organization was founded in 1928, the U.S. Demeter Association was formed in the 1980s and certified its first farm in 1982. In France, Biodivin certifies biodynamic wine. In Egypt, SICOM has created the Egyptian Biodynamic Association, EBDA, an association that provides training for farmers to become certified. As of 2006, more than 200 wineries worldwide were certified as biodynamic. Numerous other wineries employ biodynamic methods to a greater or lesser extent. Effectiveness. Research into biodynamic farming has been complicated by the difficulty of isolating the distinctively biodynamic aspects when conducting comparative trials. Consequently, there is no strong body of material that provides evidence of any specific effect. Since biodynamic farming is a form of organic farming, it can be generally assumed to share its characteristics, including less stressed soils and thus diverse and highly interrelated soil communities. A 2009/2011 review found that biodynamically cultivated fields had lower absolute yields than conventional farms, but achieved better efficiency of production relative to the amount of energy used. Had greater earthworm populations and biomass than conventional farms. Both factors were similar to the result in organically cultivated fields. Reception. In a 2002 newspaper editorial, Peter True, agricultural researcher at the University of Kiel, characterized biodynamics as pseudoscience and argued that similar or equal results can be obtained using standard organic farming principles. He wrote that some biodynamic preparations more resemble alchemy or magic akin to geomancy. In a 1994 analysis, Holger Kirschmann, a soil researcher with the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, concluded that Steiner's instructions were occult and dogmatic, and cannot contribute to the development of alternative or sustainable agriculture. According to Kirschmann, many of Steiner's statements are not provable because scientifically clear hypotheses cannot be made from his descriptions. Kirschmann asserted that when methods of biodynamic agriculture were tested scientifically, the results were unconvincing. Further, in a 2004 overview of biodynamic agriculture, Linda Chalker-Scott, a researcher at Washington State University, characterized biodynamics as pseudoscience, writing that Steiner did not use scientific methods to formulate his theory of biodynamics, and that the later addition of valid organic farming techniques has muddled the discussion of Steiner's original idea. Based on the scant scientific testing of biodynamics, Chalker-Scott concluded no evidence exists that homeopathic preparations improve the soil. In Michael Shermer's The Skeptic Encyclopedia of Pseudoscience, Dan Dugan says that the way biodynamic preparations are supposed to be implemented are formulated solely on the basis of Steiner's own insight. Skeptic Brian Dunning writes the best way to think of biodynamic agriculture would be as a magic spell cast over an entire farm. Biodynamics sees an entire farm as a single organism, with something that they call a life force. Florian Lieber, Nikolai Fuchs, and Hartmut Spies, researchers at the Guggenheim, have defended the principles of biodynamics and suggested that critiques of biodynamic agriculture which deny its scientific credibility are not in keeping with the facts, as they take no notice of large areas of biodynamic management and research. Biodynamic farmers are charged with developing a continuous dialogue between biodynamic science and the natural sciences sensu stricto, despite important differences in paradigms, worldviews, and value systems. Philosopher of science Michael Ruse has written that followers of biodynamic agriculture rather enjoy the scientific marginalization that comes from its pseudo-scientific basis, reveling both in its esoteric aspects and the impression that they were in the vanguard of the wider anti-science sentiment that has grown in opposition to modern methods such as genetic modification. Steiner's theory was similar to those of the agricultural scientist Richard Krzyzimowski, who was teaching in Breslau since 1922. The environmental scientist Frank M. Rock mentioned in 1995, concerning the reprint of a book from Raoul Heinrich France, another source probably used by Steiner.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.